Welcome to the Courage Over Comfort podcast. I'm Sheilla Dare. This is the podcast that's meant to inspire you to step into your courage and out of your comfort zone, because that's where we learn and grow and find out what we're truly capable of. It's outside the comfort zone where all the magic happens. In today's episode, we're talking about facing rejection and ultimately carving out your own path. My guest today is Kristin Giese. She's a talent manager, producer, brand developer, press maven, and most recently, author. Kristin's new book, titled Unverified, is in readers' hands today due to her perseverance and her ability to overcome challenges, and she's here to share her story with us. Kristin, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
I'm very excited that you're here to share your story of your journey of getting your first book published.
Me as well. I mean, it's crazy for me to even be talking about the book being out there because for so long it was just this thing that you're doing head down, eyes on your own paper, click-clacking away on your computer, writing every day and hoping that it's going to get out there, but not sure exactly the path for it to get out there, but this faith that you're going to figure it all out. If in case you haven't picked up on it, I did not follow a traditional path to publishing, although it's becoming more and more traditional in that I'm an indie author who ultimately made the choice to publish the book myself in order to ensure that it got out there. Yeah. And so now having it in your hands, literally,
you guys can't see, but literally I'm holding her book in my hand.
It's amazing. It's amazing. And it feels like doing the ultimate school project that you got done, that you feel whether or not you get an A, that you did it, that's what it feels like on crack. Yeah.
Well, it's one thing, like you said, to be typing away on your computer and getting your story out. And then it's another thing to actually then have to figure out how to get it published and how to get it printed and how to get it in people's hands. So tell me about your journey, how you made that happen.
The journey to get the book out there really started in the most non-traditional, and I will say foolish way. It started as anything starts, with a conversation that surprised me. I went to an event in Los Angeles that a friend invited me to, and it was a party called the Greater Good Party. And I arrived that night, and there was this whiteboard on the front stoop that had a question, and I instantly cringed on the inside. I just thought, what kind of LA party am I at? Like this phony baloney, we're so wokeness. We're all going to talk about intention. And I'm thinking, this is the last place I want to be. But I told a friend that I would meet her there. And so I was going to get there. And I thought it was a pool party. And I arrived and got some, soda, went out to the back, and there was no pool, which also felt typical LA, like false advertising through and through. And I hung out for my friend to arrive. And of course, also typical LA, with traffic, they were an hour and a half late. So I was there at this party by myself, waiting for them to arrive so that way we could lay eyes on one another and I could say, you see, I came tonight, right? I did my duty. I'm here. I showed up. And before they arrived, the hosts called us into the living room, and there was a room filled with chairs, all kind of in a circle. And I just had this feeling, it felt like a horror movie where the door gets further away as you're trying to get to it, and the one chair.
You're like, what did I get myself into?
Yeah. And the one chair that remains is the chair for me is the furthest from the door. And so I sit down, and the host said, we're going to go around the room and we're going to answer this question one by one. It was the question on the whiteboard. And I'll tell you what the question was in a minute, but the room, one by one, people started to speak. And they started to answer the question in a way that was so profound and deeply moving that I felt rocked to my core. The whiteboard said, what's on your back burner that should be on your front burner? And people answered this question: my children, my marriage, my relationship with my mother, And it was such vulnerability that you don't expect in most orbits of a room full of people. You certainly don't expect it when you thought you were showing up to a pool party.
Right, especially amongst a bunch of people that nobody really knows each other.
Correct. And so by the time it got to me, I stood up and I said to the room, I thought I was coming to a pool party and you all took me to the frickin' ocean and I didn't even bring pool floats. Like, I didn't know what was happening. And I then shared that I wanted to write a book. And the thing that struck me was everyone in the room took this information really well. They were 100% supportive right out of the gate. I was so stunned that I said it because, I had thought at different times in my life, I feel like I could write my version of a Bridget Jones's Diary or The Devil Wears Prada. That genre, that style of book is something that I think suits my personality. Or if I were to write, I'm not even professionally, I'm a talent manager and producer. I'm not even at that moment, I'm not even a writer, But I thought it felt like the thing that floated to the surface when you just get to this really vulnerable space. You're taking in what everyone is sharing. They're sort of laying themselves bare and you're letting your guard down further and further and further and stripping away all that armor that we walk through life with about what we're supposed to do, what we better do, what we need to do. And as each person shared, I could feel the heft of just that, not weighing me down. I don't want it to say that. It felt the opposite of that. In one respect, it was such heaviness that it, in a way that the best kind of heaviness, like those blankets that they sell now that weigh 80 pounds that cocoon you so you can sleep better, the weighted blankets, the emotional support blankets. You have one?
I have one.
See? That you can crawl into in your little shame spiral and cuddle up. It felt like that. Like, in one way it was so much, but it felt comforting because we were all willing to put it out there, that it had this effect on me. I'm a pretty, I don't want to say jaded person, but sometimes I'm like, do I have a coal black heart? Like, what am I going through life? You just take things on. You see so much. You've been through so many struggles. You're an entrepreneur. You've been up, you've been down, you've had loss or, whatever. And I just thought, well, I'm just going to get up and speak. And I was shocked by what I was saying. And I went home and thought, well, first I cried in my car afterwards from all the emotions of it. And then I went home and I thought, well, that was fun for a night. And now we're done with that and on with your life you go. And these humans from this party started to email me and ask me how the book was coming.
Wow.
And I was like, who are these people? Like, why? What? I was like, I'm not writing a book. I've got a business to run. And I know I said it, but like, come on. I have other things that I'm doing. I have to make a living. And I then had a massive shift in my business. I had a long-term client that we parted ways. And I tend to believe and often give this advice as a talent manager, you're so many different things. You're a confidant, you're the taskmaster, you're the psychologist, you're the work spouse, you're wearing all these different hats to cajole people into the versions of themselves and their greater success. And so you tend to be the advice giver, not the advice taker. You don't really have even time to apply it to yourself. And so but the advice that I had been giving to clients is when you think that the chips are down, sometimes it just means you're meant to go all in. If you think you can only reach the next rung, you're actually probably meant to try and reach 3 rungs after.
Oh, I like that.
That's like when you should stretch the most, because that's when you have the least to lose, in the sense, because you already feel like you're losing. So it's like, why? I'm just going to go for it. I'm going to just try even harder, because now's the time to give the bigger risk to get the bigger reward. And so I found myself, when this happened, thinking, well, I'll just keep doing what we do. I'll just keep signing clients and keep developing unscripted TV shows. That's what we do. I realized, though, maybe the conversation in the room of this book floated to me that maybe when you are, I kind of liken it to, I believe that we all are sort of ships, but the universe wants you to be on open water. It wants you to put your sails up. It wants you to go for your biggest wins and keep trying even harder to set towards even wider waters. And yet so many of us live and stay on the dry dock. Yeah. We kind of leave our boat there and look at the water. And we have a
safe
100%, the safe harbor sort of a thing. And even if we don't even get in the water. And I kind of felt like when this client and I parted ways that I had been woman overboard in the deep and I hadn't prepared my own ship. And there I was trying to rebuild my boat in 100 feet of water where you don't have the right leverage and you don't have the right strength in order to get it all pieced together. And when I finally got back on that boat and thought, okay, now I'm on, we're just going to chart the same course, I realized after I'd been through all of that, oh, the same course isn't going to work anymore. And there were other parts of it of this boat that I wanted for myself. And one of those was being an author.
I love that.
And that to me all of a sudden felt like it should be the biggest room on the boat. And that was such an unsettling thought for me because it was going to require, I was 3 rungs down. I needed to reach the next rung of the next client, the next big project. This is my business, my staff, my employees, their insurance, our bills, all of those things. And I all of a sudden thought, wait, am I going to take my own advice and try and reach 3 rungs? Is that honestly what I'm going to do? Because I feel like now that I'm trying to take the kind of advice that I've been giving to my clients and they look at me like I'm crazy, I'm kind of looking at myself like I'm crazy because I'm thinking, how dare you?
And now you know how all of your
Correct.
Clients have been hearing it because you're hearing it in your own head.
And for the first time, I started to evaluate that maybe I should be my biggest client.
I love that. Is that when the shift happened?
And that is when the shift happened. And I think that everyone should be their own best client. And that is what we often, I think, that's what I missed for so long. And I think obviously that has to be revealed to you in the right moment. Because if you try and do it too soon, you're not going to get the footing. You're not going to get the leverage. You're not going to get the stateroom on the boat that the wing woman of the universe wants you to have.
Right.
So it all obviously happens in the way that it's meant to happen, but it can only happen if you put your boat in the water. And so many people still just stay on the dry dock filled with alibis. Like, well, I can't until, and it won't work because, and it's all of these reasons why it can't go right. And I just have learned that you can't raise your sails unless you're actually in the water.
Yeah. And we've got to be stronger than our biggest excuse.
Correct.
Right?
Correct. Exactly. And I get fear. There's only 2 emotions. There's love and fear. Everything is a derivative of that. And it's very easy to be consumed by the worry. Worry is very much like water. I had a leak in the house once and the water went everywhere. And I said to the plumber, how did it get into the living room? And he's like, water. It started in your bathroom, but it travels. It finds its way. And that is worry. It starts in your brain and it finds its way all the way down to heart stopping, anxiety, feet that don't move. You just become stagnant by it. And it's so dangerous to allow that to happen. And even now, I constantly am trying to talk myself out of stopping the wind, because once I started on the journey, and by starting, I just started to write the first chapter.
Yeah.
And I called Erin, who works for me, and she was on maternity leave, and I called her on her maternity leave, and she started to gush about her baby boy. And I said, that's lovely. I wrote a chapter in a book. Do you want to hear it? like, it's great that you had a baby, and I'm sure he's so handsome. But
it's almost like it's putting yourself out there to be vulnerable, to say, hey, look, I'm doing this, and I wrote a first chapter. Like, what do you think? And it's that stepping into that courage to continue doing it, because the more you step into courage, it builds your confidence.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that success is such an illusion. Success is only rising in all the falls. Like every day you fall. And when you rise in the fall, you're succeeding. There's a neighborhood school by where I live, and they have this wall that says success or nothing else. And I want to go spray paint over it.
That sounds kind of harsh.
I want to be like, these little kids need a different mantra than success or nothing else. It's like success is such an illusion in the sense of this, what you see on Instagram, what you see in the world of this is what success is. Success is just sticking with it. It's just any forward motion, is starting where you are. Yes. That is success. Yes. Starting where you are. And that is what I did. I was in the midst of rehabbing and refocusing certain client projects and signing new talent. And at the same time, I was secretly in between meetings writing my book. That's awesome. And then once the book was written, I think it took about 3 months to get the first draft in place. And once the book was written, then came the real work, the hard work, in that's when all the rejection comes.
Yeah. So once you had your book written, what was the next step?
The next step was endeavoring to follow the traditional model of getting published. And in order to get published, you have to have an agent that opens those doors to the publishers. And as a talent manager, the way that the book for me started, honestly, the book didn't actually even start because of the Greater Good Party. I put it into the universe because of the Greater Good Party. But the universe, being the wing woman that she is, I kept putting down the idea of the book and she kept serving it up. And I thought at one point, it's so hard to sell scripted television right now. I'm going to try and sell, or unscripted television. I'm going to see if I can try my hand at selling scripted television. And the concept for Unverified was one of those concepts for a scripted show.
So you had already had this story running.
I had this
in your head,
thread of an idea, just the thread of how it could work in a TV format. And I put together my deck just like I would on the reality side. And I took my first meeting with a producer. This was at least 7 months before I started to actually, or I'd say 4 months before I actually started to write the book, because I had to go through several pitch meetings. And I walked into the first room with this producer and I pitched him. First of all, he said to me, "How did you get this meeting?" Which was code for who do you know? Because if you know someone important, I'm going to be nicer to you than if you don't know someone important. And so I said, I got in the room this way. And he said, "Okay, go ahead." I started to pitch him the idea for what Unverified is. And he looked stunned and then said, "Oh, I think I want to buy this." And I said, "Oh, I am going to buy a Tesla." Like, I just was like, we're succeeding. This is happening. This is success, I said, because I'm a talent manager, I asked a question and just, how will we partner? And he said, and I won't use the same graphic language. I don't know your audience, but he said, "Who the F do you think you are?" And I said, "Oh, I'm sorry." And he, I did what I think women especially do, because it's what we've had to do for so long. You arrive your fullest self. You're a full swan in my best power jacket with my best earrings on and ready for this meeting. And I arrive my fullest part of myself as a swan. And in that instant, you origami yourself into a tiny little bird to make yourself smaller for this person in the room who needs you to know that you're smaller than them. And I said, "Oh, I'm smaller. I'm so sorry. Perhaps that didn't come out right. I'm simply just wondering, would I have a part of this? This is an idea that I came up with." And I'm instantly, within 20 seconds of it beginning, asking, "Mother, may I?"
God, right.
And
he liked the idea.
He was shocked that he wanted to buy it. And I instantly made myself smaller. And he said, "I'll just say again, I don't know who the F you think you are. You are not anybody. You've never done this. You're not a writer. So let the big guns take it."
What did that do to your confidence?
I think because I've been in entertainment for so long, one, I wasn't shocked by the behavior. So there's that. That tells you the state of the union. Two, it made me, by virtue of what I do, I'm capable, for better or for worse, in the sense of it serving me well in business, it's for the better. Serving me well personally, it would be for the worse. I'm able to compartmentalize instantly and continue like a coach, continue to be able to just look at the field. Well, where's my pocket to get through? So my mind goes immediately, how do I get through the pocket with this guy? How do I salvage this? How do I get this back on track? How do I still get this to be an actual show?
Yeah.
And he said something else, and it was just really clear that there was going to be no me as a part of what it was. And he said something again, and I said, well, I think that you left off one really important word. I'm not a writer yet. And I went home and I cried in my car. I like to cry in my car. It feels like a panic room,
Right. It's your little private safe space for a minute to just let it go.
A little panic room. And then I called my friend and I said, I think I might have ruined your relationship with that guy. Sorry. And undeterred, she said, I have someone else for you to maybe meet with. And I met with that group and they said, we think we want to do this. And I've already kind of had origamied myself for that room and asked a bit differently. And they were more polite, but they said, listen, you're not a writer. So how could we include you? And I thought, well, I'm a talent manager. I can think of 30 ways that you could include me. But clearly, that's not the conversation that you're invested in. So I left that room and I thought, well, if I write it, that just takes out both of their arguments. And so I still hadn't thought, well, I'm going to write that book because it was like the universe being the ultimate wing woman, like tricked me into that moment of like, girl, we're on the boat. We're going, get on board.
I love that.
And so when the book was finally done, and to circle back to your question the long way around of what were those next steps, is that traditional publishing model, which as a talent manager, I've sold books for clients. So I reached out to people that I know. And I think the first step for anyone doing anything, doing any hard thing, your first step is probably going to be hardship and rejection. And if you aren't prepared for how to withstand, again, it's not about the fall, it's about the rise, over and over and over again.
Yes. So how did you handle that?
At this point, we are 70. I mean, my book now has been out since June, and I just last Friday got my 70th rejection from an agent who still didn't Google to even see that my book was out. And so we spent about 6 months submitting, querying, going after the agents to try and open those doors. And we had about 16 people call in the manuscript and say, we like your writing style, we like your voice, we just don't like the category of rom-com. Not one of those agents had a conversation with me, which I find to be so fascinating because I am in their business. I'm not literary, but I am in their realm. And I think to myself, what was in my query letter of the work I've done with Oprah and Target and NBC, all these big, and to not even have someone want to understand my strengths on the other side and how it could impact was fascinating to me, but also maybe a lens that I needed to see because it was a strong reminder to me. No one knows what they are doing. Not a single soul. The only people who maybe know what they're doing are heart surgeons and brain surgeons who know exactly where to cut and go in and what. But the outcomes, what will happen, we all might have tactics for, hey, this is how you hold the ball. This is how you climb the ladder if you're a fireman. This is how you put on that suit. Tactics, yes. But actual path, projections, what will happen, no one knows what they are doing. We are all making it up as we go along.
What's interesting to me is that your book is published. It's in my hand. It's out there. You're on Goodreads. People are reading your book. People are downloading the Audible version of it. And you are still getting just these blank rejection letters
Correct.
from publishers.
A year after I submitted them. And so in that moment of realizing like, oh, these are the same people who turned down Harry Potter. Not that my book is Harry Potter. I mean, obviously she's in a realm all her own, but it just is more proof of why are you waiting for a yes from why are you accepting a no from someone who can't even give you a yes? You know what I mean? Why is that? Who gets to make the decision for your path forward? I get needing real feedback. If I tried to go on American Idol, I cannot sing. Obviously, someone stop me. This is not your chosen profession. But other than that, everything else is so much more subjective about your capabilities and your skills, you know? And so I remembered in the midst of all of that, it was like, oh, they can't tell me no. No one can tell me no. My entire business, if I had taken the no's for what I do professionally, I wouldn't have done all the things that I did professionally. So why would I start accepting no's now? I've eaten Impossible for breakfast every day since I started my own company. Why would this be any different? All of those successes were because I was able to keep working until I found out how to do something, until I figured it out.
Did you feel that this project of getting your book out there, did you feel like that was different because it was directly for you?
I do. But I also felt like there was a pull, maybe ego-wise, because we're all human. Being published carries such clout to how you can have success, you know? And it is very clear to me that anyone right now can write and publish a book. Amazon makes that possible, but not everyone can write and sell a book. And that is a very different path. And so there is value to what publishers bring in that realm, not only the clout of it, but hey, we're going to immediately put you in all these booksellers.
Yeah.
That is very hard to do as an indie author. Like we are actively every day campaigning for libraries to pick us up, because they're very important to book sales. I didn't know. So it's now educating myself in this whole other genre of what it takes to meet success there. And one of those things that we did is I actually hired a woman to help me with some of the book marketing, because even though what I do for a living applies to this, it's not specific to what I've done. So I still needed other experts. You know, we oftentimes have people hire us to say, listen, I could do this part of the job, but I don't have the time, so you can do it. That is so insulting and undermining to what we actually do, because there is a skill to what we're bringing. There's guidance, there's knowledge, there's background, there's history, there's negotiating skills, the creativity to do it. And I knew that I didn't want to do that same thing. I am not a book marketer. So therefore, I wanted to have the right hands on deck with me. This woman that we hired was such a point of difference for me in helping me appreciate some of this path forward and saying, here's some of the tactics that we can employ in order for a book to be sold. And here's some of the ways that we can get libraries and gain that awareness. You know, it takes more than just yourself.
Well, it takes a lot out of you to want to do this enough to find the mentors and find the people who can teach you and to be teachable.
Correct.
Like to put your ego aside for a minute and say, okay, I don't know everything and I need help.
Correct.
And I want this to be a success because like you said, it's very easy now to be self-published, but that doesn't mean that your book is going to reach the audience.
Correct.
So now all the work you're doing is to get it into the hands of readers.
Correct.
And it's all like kind of new waters for you.
Correct. And even though I was met with an immediate wall, you know, some of the people who I thought would show up to support when I was seeking the traditional model, those were some of the people who were the harshest. Like, oh, darling, why are you doing this? You know, you're not going to succeed. If you're doing it just to say that you've done it, then keep going. But if you think you're actually going to be successful at it, well, let me just correct you. You won't be. And it's all just a reminder, again, of everything is love or fear. That's all just folks who are afraid for themselves. When people tell you what you can't do,
they're telling you what they can't do.
They're telling you what they can't do. And they're also showing you that I'm worried if you go do that thing, you will outgrow me. Mm. And you just might, but you were probably meant to. Because you need the people on your team who are in the woods with you with machetes hacking through to build a path. That's who you need. And so what I was astonished by were the people that I thought would show up that didn't, but I needed to see that. And the people who I had no idea that would, that suddenly appeared. And that is the blessing of starting a new journey and realizing, I think a lot of people get hung up on the people who don't show up. And I feel like that is complete wasted energy. You're better off knowing who's not going to show up that you thought
You're
would.
better off knowing sooner than later, let me tell you.
Correct. You start to, certainly as I get older, I have a real awareness about how valuable the one thing that we have is time, to be giving that to people who can't. When you're showing up for people who can't show up for you, you need to be in some new rooms, and I needed to see that. So there was this process was just revelation. I feel like I didn't write a book. I feel like I started a personal revolution. Like everything from the minute that I began it made me cellularly different by the virtue of it, and how I do my day job as a talent manager and producer to how I approach the next book. It's all been this knowledge, and on the journey of going through it, one of the experts that Sarah, who is the book marketer that we hired, we got on the phone with another consultant with her, and this woman said, "What is success for you?" And I said, "Well, listen, I'm not going to lie. I see the headline of being a top bestseller and unverified, made into a film, that I see the top of the mountain, and I, like Babe Ruth, am pointing to exactly where we're going and hitting the ball in that direction. But I don't believe that I own a helicopter that's going to get me there. I have to make this climb one step at a time. And every time we slide back, which we will again and again, we have to dig in and climb some more. And that is what we're doing. And that is, I'm learning so much in the process of that, of the process of doing it, of how to do it better, of how to be better for me, for even with my clients, and now some of my clients have actually said to me, I realize now all the things that you were telling us we need to do, you're actually doing those things, but you're actually doing them. Instead of it's hard or
you're
whatever.
Not just talking the talk,
Correct.
You're walking the walk.
You actually are doing them and trying them. And so that it's been such an empowering process to go through it all. And I have to say, at times, like anything, there are moments, like some people are really mean on the internet, and you read a review where someone's like 1 star, hated it. And you're like, you know what, Tina? I don't like you either. I don't know you. Put a sock in it. But then you read something, the true test of success of a book is when people you don't know who buy it. And to see someone that I don't know post up like, I read this book and loved it and read it in 2 days, that to me is the measure of success. Someone I don't know finding their way to the book is where we're headed. That's what we're climbing towards.
So what's been your proudest moment through this journey?
I think my proudest moment, for sure, was when I got the first copies of the book and held them in my hand, because it felt like, oh, we did the damn thing. And even though that was only just the beginning of the hardest, steepest parts of the climb, you have to celebrate all the moments that I look back and I think, I don't have a single picture of me with Oprah. 100 tapings that I went to of the projects that we did, I never once took a single picture. I was just there doing my job, behind the scenes, meeting Michelle Obama. I was just in job mode, and I didn't stop to take it in. And so I think I'm proud that I'm really allowing myself to take in just how hard this is and how much we need to cheer one another on for doing it. I've always been the girl to say to a complete stranger in the grocery store, like, your eyeshadow looks amazing. I don't know what you did with your hair today, but it's working. Like, I've always been the girl to compliment strangers because I just think it's hard out here. If we're not going to support one another in big ways, but also in little ways to bolster us forward, what are we doing? So I'm trying to now do that for myself, to be the girl in the grocery store is like, your hair looks great today, but like, put it to me, I'm doing hard things. We're all doing hard things. So that makes me proud.
Yeah. You inspire me, which is one of the reasons why I absolutely wanted to have you on the show, because when I first heard your story, I just kept thinking like, that's the girl that will not stay down when she gets knocked down.
Yeah.
And I want to be in her orbit.
Yeah.
And like,
that's so lovely.
it's so important because oftentimes people have ideas to want to do something, to get out of your comfort zone, to take that leap of faith, to start a project, to go for a promotion or whatever it may be. Everybody has different goals in their lives. But oftentimes when somebody gets told no or gets turned away or hears a harsh criticism, then they give up or they're giving up too soon.
Yeah.
And your story is just a testament to what one person can achieve when you don't take no for an answer and you've completely carved out your own path and found a way to get your book in the hands of readers and you're out there promoting it and you're making it happen on top of your career and your day job. It's so inspiring. And I wanted people to hear your story so that they too know that they can do what they aspire to do.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting. One quote, and this is so cheesy, that is kept me going. Is his name James Dyson, who created the Dyson vacuums?
Oh, I
think
I'm
maybe,
not sure.
I don't know but Dyson,
Dyson,
the gentleman who founded the company. Someone had asked him in an interview along the way, why are you so successful? And he said, because, we're all on this journey. And at some point people start to turn back. And I never turned back. At some point people are like, well, it didn't happen by now. Pack it in and go back the other way. I pass them all as I keep going forward, because what if it's just around the next corner that it breaks and you gave up the corner before? How could you? It was just one more corner. And I say that to myself like a crazy person. It could be just one more corner. Like a total lunatic.
I'm going to go home and write that on my mirror. For when I feel like having a tough day and I'm going to pack it in. Nope.
Yeah, you just keep going forward. And that to me is that's been my entire career, both what I've done traditionally as my day job to what I'm doing now. It's been the hardest lesson in that in television, you don't get a second season unless your first season was good enough. And I'm having to learn a new muscle memory because this book isn't about that. It's not going to be that critical success right out of the gate. That's like, yep, she got on that New York Times bestseller. And so now you get the second one. It's not that. I have to know that we're in it for the long haul and do it anyway. We talk ourselves out of what we want. And that is all a reflection of worth and value.
Absolutely.
And our lack of faith in our worth and our value.
Absolutely.
And so you have to constantly give yourself that pep talk that says, no, I'm not going to buy my own BS. I'm going to listen to the part of me that says what's impossible is possible.
That in itself is just a beautiful sentiment.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. So, Kristin, I have one last question for you before I let you tell us what your book is about. I want to know, through all of this over the last year and a half of your book journey, how has this experience changed you?
I think it's changed me. I mean, obviously it's changed me profoundly. I've had more firsts in the last year since I started this than in the 10 years before. And I've always done big things professionally by virtue of what my job is. But these were the first time I had enough faith in myself to put myself in the race. This was the first time that I actually wrote in the way that I was writing now. I mean, I'd gone to school to be a speechwriter, which is very different than what this novel is. And so it was a lot of firsts. And I think that when you allow yourself to be curious about what you're capable of, you just might really surprise yourself. I mean, I did, and now I have a book, and I did stand up a few weeks ago for the first time. I've just done so many things because it almost feels like, well, if I did that, I can do this.
Right.
And that is a cellular difference. Instead of living in that, what could go wrong? It shifted. And I've always been an optimist because I've always been like, I'll figure it out. You can't hustle harder than me. You can't outwork me. I'll always be the girl that's the one there at the grindstone doing it. But this was the first time that I really said, well, let's see what else you can do. Let's try something different. And that has a cascade effect. So that to me would be the biggest cellular change.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love it.
Thank you.
So tell us a little bit now what your book is about.
Yeah, so Unverified is a rom-com. It's about Matt and Margot, two 20-something strangers who come together in a lie that turns their life upside down. It's set in the digital age. It's a non-traditional rom-com in the sense that I cared as much about who Matt is and who he's becoming as I do about Margot. So it starts a little differently. Some rom-coms start out with that inciting incident right out of the gate. Mine builds a little bit more, but it's about them and a big lie they tell that changes, a small lie that they tell that changes their life in a big way.
Well,
yeah.
I just got it from Amazon.
Amazing.
And I can't wait to start reading it. Thank you so much for sharing your story. You had said to me in a conversation a few days ago that being vulnerable does not mean being weak.
Mm-hmm.
And that is so empowering because so many people are afraid to be vulnerable and they don't want to put themselves out there, which stops them from doing things like writing your first novel and everything that you went through to get to this moment where you are right now with me holding your book and doing this interview. Vulnerability is not weakness.
Not at all.
It is a strength.
Absolutely. And I find sometimes what we are afraid of the most is absolutely what we must conquer.
Exactly.
And so this idea of vulnerability, I think people mistake this idea of your work isn't good enough to you aren't good enough. Mm-hmm. And all of it is subjective and relative. And all of it can be harnessed, honed, perfected, worked on. And that's what we're all works in progress.
Yeah.
I think Sophia Bush recently said, you can be a work in progress and a masterpiece all at the same time.
Yes.
And that is 100% accurate for all of us.
Absolutely. Thank you for being my guest today. And if you want to connect with Kristin and follow her great adventures, like maybe her next stand-up comedy night, she is putting herself out there in all kinds of amazing ways. You can find her on Instagram at Allmoxie. That's ALLMOXIE. I will also include it in the show notes. And in the show notes, there will also be a link for you to find her book, Unverified, on Amazon. And I just want to leave you with what we started with. What's on your back burner that should be on your front burner? Thank you so much for tuning in. If you're enjoying the show, please subscribe, rate 5 stars, and share with anyone else who you think might enjoy it as well. I'm Sheilla Dare, and I encourage you to live outside your comfort zone. Until next time.